The film begins with Frendon awakening in a desolate place known as the Common Ground, greeted by a solitary image of his mother. The atmosphere evokes that of a prison, punctuated by the blaring alarm signaling the imminent feeding cycle in just 16 minutes. Before venturing to the meal room, Frendon stealthily traverses through intricate tunnels in search of someone who ultimately reveals herself to be his mother's closest confidant. Upon learning of his mother's departure long ago, she implores him to undertake a journey to reunite with her. Despite initial hesitation, she offers him solace, assuring him that as long as he maintains his intellect, he will persevere. Equipped with a photograph of Augustus, his potential ally, Frendon resolves to depart the confines of the facility in pursuit of his mother. Next, we find Frendon at the facility gates, requesting a 15-minute outdoor break from the stern gatekeeper. Despite the guard's hostility and ominous warnings of consequences for exceeding the time limit, Frendon persists. Reluctantly, the gatekeeper sets a timer on his arm, programmed to terminate him instantly if he fails to return on time. In the subsequent scene, Frendon emerges from the subterranean container, having been confined for the past 6 months, and realizes it's time to liberate himself after 27 years. Determined, he stealthily approaches the wire fence, enduring bloody and injured hands from cutting through. Despite the pain, he persists until he successfully breaches the compound and flees towards the main city. Just as he escapes, the timer on his arm triggers, prompting him to take the daring step of removing it. Fortunately, nothing adverse occurs, leading him to the realization that they had been deceived and lied to all along. In the city, Frendon encounters Augustus in the ghetto by chance. Upon seeing Frendon's determination to escape the Common Ground and seek freedom, Augustus scrutinizes him and questions his understanding of freedom, noting the injuries on his hands from navigating the razor wire barriers. After a brief exchange, Frendon reveals his purpose for seeking Augustus: assistance. Augustus agrees to aid him, but insists on first tending to Frendon's wounds, taking him home for treatment. During their conversation, it becomes evident that the timeline has progressed into a more advanced and modern era. Significant changes have occurred, and the world now operates under a different system altogether. Suddenly, a young girl races towards Augustus, desperately seeking refuge from 2 approaching police officers. Augustus swiftly embraces her, shielding her from potential harm. But his defiance is met with a tragic outcome as one of the officers fires a fatal shot, leaving the girl lifeless. In the ensuing commotion, the officers turn their aggression towards Augustus, prompting Frendon to intervene by striking one of them with a pipe. However, amidst the chaos, Frendon is momentarily paralyzed with shock as he witnesses the police fatally shoot Augustus. The scene shifts to a facility where Frendon is held captive, accompanied by 2 guards named Officer Otis and V. It's V's first day on the job, and she's fascinated by what she's witnessing. Otis explains that what she's seeing is just a portion of Frendon's brain kept in a computer. V asks about Frendon's moans of pain, and Otis explains that it's due to the restraint cable attached to his brain. The facility resembles an advanced courtroom, and they're waiting for the judge to appear. Soon, a screen will light up with a judge appearing on it. It's an automated jury system, and everything is done virtually. The judge orders Frendon to be awakened, and they comply. Upon waking, Frendon is confused and disoriented, trying to make sense of what's happening. The judge asks him to confirm his identity by stating his ID number, but Frendon doesn't respond. The judge then asks if his name is Frendon, to which Frendon confirms his identity. Frendon asks why he is tied to this chair and gets demands for answers. The judge tells him he's restrained because he is considered dangerous to the officers and that he has shown himself to be a flight risk. Frendon is now understanding the situation he is in. The chair has neurochem in the tubes that are attached to his brain, so if he tried to do anything, it would know it and paralyze him. Next, England is told to approach him to hear his case. The judge instructs Frendon to approach him to hear his case. He's charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and assaulting a police officer during duty, along with escape from confinement. If found guilty, he faces swift execution. V, upon hearing this, disagrees. She says it's terrible to kill the man on the chair, no matter what he did. Otis tells her that the defendants usually don't feel anything since it happens quickly. Frendon was then asked how he pleads, and suddenly another woman appears on a screen and tells the judge her client isn't guilty. However, Franklin is not happy and says he wants to fire his lawyer. Otis immediately warns France to reconsider his words because once he loses the case, there is no coming back. The artificially intellectual judge then asks Franklin why he wants to do so, and Franklin says she isn't qualified to represent him. He explains that his lawyer and the court system have the same software and the same database. He also asks if this is going to be a trial by a jury. Frendon wants to defend himself and somehow knows how the system works. He is making the AI judge confused and is now accessing some information about the jury. Meanwhile, England turns around and talks to V. He seems interested in her. He asks her where she is from, and V tells him she is from a lower level, Gramercy. She tells him that the first time she was in the sun was when she was 8. He tells her he was 16 when he did, and the two find something that relates to them. The AI judge then comes back and informs France that he is presented with 12 randomly picked juries, and we see the people appearing on the screen. The people seem to be already dead, and the one that is appearing on the screen is from their collective memory. Frendon made inquiries about his lawyer's database. He asks if the defense circuits are used to inform the court's database, and if that's so, it means his lawyer is being used for both the prosecution and the defense. He makes his point to the judge, and this makes the court angry. They then electrify him through the wires attached, and we see Franklin passed out on the floor. Otis and V decide to wait for 15 minutes before taking any action, but Otis claims that he has never seen the court in a logic loop before. V also asks about the jury that appears on the screen. She is told that they were indeed real people, but when they died, parts of their brains were taken, and now they are connected to a computer. V doesn't like how people's brains are manipulated. She also feels sorry for France. The story moves to a made-up world where Frendon has passed out. There, he meets Augustus. He encourages him to keep going, but Frendon worries he might die if he tries. Augustus reassures him that the truth never dies, it just goes underground. Frendon then wakes up, finding himself on V's lap. She comforts him, but Otis is still mean to him. Otis believes automatic justice is what people wanted, and now it's being served by artificially composed judges. In the next part, the trial continues, and Frendon is asked if he still wants to speak for himself. Undeterred, Frendon stands up to defend himself. He tells the judge he thinks the court and the defense are secretly working together, so he can't get a fair trial unless he speaks up. The judge then asks how he pleads to the charges, and Frendon starts with the murder case. The judge then speaks up. Frendon is accused of using a gun he took from an officer to shoot and kill a little girl. This is supported by fingerprints found on the gun. The next accusation is about Augustus. Frendon is accused of shooting Augustus in the chest. There's also a video of a police officer saying Frendon was the shooter. Hearing this, the jury is surprised and leans towards finding him guilty. After listening to the accusations, Frendon calmly addresses the jury. First, he wants them to know who he is. He explains that he was born 27 years ago in a place called Common Ground, where people like him, called white noise or backgrounders, are forced to live underground. He never knew his parents and never received proper training. He learned what he knows from public reading videos and Saturday night movies. He always desired to be free, but the rigged system prevented him from achieving even that. He concludes by saying his actions were driven by constant boredom and a longing for freedom, even if it meant being killed by the guards. The jury seems to understand and empathize with his pain. He somehow connects with them. After he finishes speaking, the judge tells him that the testimonies against him are weak, and if he has anything better to present, they can proceed with judgment. Frendon asserts that he didn't kill Augustus or the girl, it was the cops who did it. However, he admits to killing one officer. The judge replies that it is a capital offense to kill an officer, but Franklin explains that the officer was about to assault the girl. He asks if there is video of that area to be referred, but the judge tells him there aren't any. But there is a witness video from the surviving officer. The screen turns on and we see the officer in his hospital room. The officer starts to explain the events of the day. He says England was attacking the child, and he also shot at him while the other officer dropped his gun. Frendon stands there confused and denies the witness's words. The judge tells him he is an officer of the law and an eyewitness, but Franklin says he has an eyewitness too. He speaks to the access line and requests August. The operator tells him Augustus has been dead, but his brain hasn't been harvested yet. Frandon then asks for the brain to be harvested and accessed. The judge doesn't like the idea, since unregistered candidates' memories cannot be accessed, but Freedom insists. He then turns to V and asks her out for a date if he survived this trial. She says maybe and flirts with him a little bit. The video begins replaying the events of the day. It becomes clear that Frendon was innocent and the officers were to blame for the little girl's death. The jury agrees with Frendon's account, but the judge insists on his execution for shooting unarmed policemen. V objects, causing chaos in the courtroom. The judge tries to maintain order, but argues with Frendon about his guilt. Despite sympathy, the court decides to execute Frendon. The judge, fueled by anger, reveals his lack of empathy and becomes hostile toward Frendon. Meanwhile, Officer Otis notices system malfunctions and heads to the tech group to report. V stays with Frendon as the jury confirms his innocence. Suddenly the screen glitches and a man appears to announce that the trial will continue despite the technical issues. Frendon is led to the execution chair as the court proceeds with the sentence, ignoring the truth of the events. In his final moments, V stands by his side, offering comfort. She assures him that he has proven his innocence to her and expresses that she would have been proud to be his friend outside of the world behind bars. Shortly after, a snake-like advanced executor emerges from the screen, instantly killing Frendon. He lies lifeless on the neurochem chair as Otis arrives with a tech expert. Otis explains that Frendon's murder was due to an inappropriate emotional response from the software, and the trial must continue despite the glitches. The scene shifts to later, with V returning to the courtroom. As she looks around, the screen turns on, revealing Frendon himself this time. She is terrified to see him in place of the judge. Frendon explains that the judge was a combination of different personalities, but he is just himself. He reveals that parts of his brain, memories, and personalities were taken, but he was saved to try and fix the system. V can't believe her eyes, but Frendon explains that the jury integrated him into the machine after proving his innocence. She insists it's not real and that he's dead, but Frendon appears before her, assuring her that his mind and soul are still alive. He reveals a plan to free fellow prisoners and overthrow the rigged system. V, now believing in him, appears hopeful. The movie ends as Frendon tells her they can accomplish anything with their minds, and he passes through her.